The day began quietly in Maplewood Estates, a suburban neighborhood with manicured lawns and freshly painted fences. Inside his modest home, Daniel Harris, a freelance graphic designer, was sipping coffee while checking emails. He wasn't officially part of the Homeowners Association HOA, but his property bordered the community. Still, that never stopped Karen Whitfield, the self-appointed queen of the HOA. From meddling in his affairs, Daniel was used to her notes taped on his mailbox. Your grass is too high. Your recycling bin is crooked. Worse, your curtains don't match the neighborhood color palette. This morning, though, Karen's obsession was about to cross a dangerous line. Outside, Karen paced in front of Daniel's driveway, muttering to herself. She was dressed in her usual pastel sweater, clipboard in hand, and a scowl that could sour. Milk, to her, Daniel was an eyesore. A man who didn't bow to HOA rules. A rebel who thought he was above order. Karen's inner dialogue was fierce. If the HOA rules won't reach him, then I will. That door doesn't even have a proper HOA-approved lock. He probably hides something illegal in there. Let's just see what's inside, shall we? As Daniel left to run an errand, Karen saw her chance. She walked swiftly to his porch, glanced around, and slipped a shiny master key from her bag. Over the years, she had collected keys from careless locksmith visits and HOA vendors. She believed it was her right to inspect any home near her territory. The lock clicked. The door creaked open. Karen smirked. Finally, she whispered, "Time to prove he's a menace." But inside the house wasn't empty. In the living room sat two uniformed police officers, arms crossed, waiting silently. Their cruiser had been parked discreetly out back, part of an undercover neighborhood patrol. Daniel had quietly approved after reporting repeated harassment from Karen. The officers rose slowly, their eyes narrowing at the stunned woman frozen. In the doorway, Karen's smugness drained instantly, replaced by shock. "Ma'am," one officer said sternly, "care to explain why you're breaking into this residence?" Karen's clipboard slipped from her fingers, clattering against the hardwood floor. Karen's jaw opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Her voice trembled as she tried to regain control of the situation. This isn't what it is. Looks like," she stammered, "I'm on the HOA board." I was. Conducting a community inspection. Officer Martinez, tall and broad-shouldered, crossed his arms. His partner, Officer Riley, raised an eyebrow. "An inspection?" Riley asked, gesturing to the doorknob. "With a master key that doesn't belong to you? Do you realize what you've just committed?" Karen's face flushed crimson. She hated losing control, especially in front of men in uniform. She quickly puffed out her chest. "I have authority. This neighborhood has rules, and this Daniel Harris constantly violates them. Someone had to take action. Protecting the integrity of our community." But Martinez stepped closer, his voice low and firm. "Ma'am, what you've done is illegal entry. This isn't HOA property. This is private residence." And the homeowner reported prior harassment. Karen froze again, reported. "Harassment," she repeated, almost choking on the words. At that exact moment, the front door creaked again. Daniel walked back in, holding a grocery bag. He stopped, blinking in surprise at the scene. Karen standing guilty in his living room, police officers towering over her. Daniel smirked slightly, placing the bag on the counter. "Well," he said calmly, "I see you found my guests." Karen's voice shot up an octave. "Guests, you set me up." Daniel folded his arms. "No, Karen," I reported. Weeks ago, I told them you were crossing lines. The late-night notes. The time you trespassed in my yard to measure my fence. And now, here you are, breaking into my house." The officers exchanged a look. Riley pulled out a small notepad. "Ma'am, you're going to need to come with us for questioning." Karen panicked. "Questioning? Arrest? You can't do this. I am the HOA." Daniel shook his head, his voice cutting like ice. "No, Karen, you're just a neighbor who thinks she's above the law. And today the law finally caught you." Karen's knees weakened as the reality sank in. The neighborhood queen bee had finally been stung. Karen's mind raced, sweat forming at her temples. She had ruled Maplewood Estates for years, intimidating families with fines and threats. Now, standing in Daniel's living room with two officers glaring at her, she felt her throne crumbling. "Wait," she sputtered, her voice shaking. "You don't understand. Daniel is a troublemaker. He parks his car 1 inch over the curb line. His curtains are off color, and once I saw him leave his garbage bin out for an extra day. The whole neighborhood suffers because of people like him." Officer Riley sighed, scribbling in his notepad. "Ma'am, none of that justifies entering his private property without permission." Karen's eyes darted around, looking for a lifeline. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She snatched it up quickly and dialed. "Hello? Yes, this is Karen Whitfield, HOA president. I need the board here now. There's been a situation." Daniel leaned casually against the counter, smirking. "Oh, please. Go ahead, bring them. Let them see exactly what kind of leader you are." Minutes later, the front porch filled with murmurs. A handful of HOA board members, neighbors in neatly pressed clothes, peeked into the doorway. Clearly uneasy, Karen straightened, trying to mask her fear. "Officers, these are my board members. They'll explain that I have authority." One of the board members, a middle-aged woman named Linda, stepped forward nervously. "Karen, we never authorized you to enter anyone's home. You've been acting well on your own lately." Karen's head whipped toward her. "Linda, don't you dare betray me. You know I'm protecting the community." Daniel folded his arms tighter, enjoying every second. "Protecting the community or feeding your ego?" he asked, his voice calm but razor-sharp. Martinez finally stepped forward, his tone decisive. "Enough. Ma'am, I'm giving you one last chance to cooperate. Either you come with us willingly, or we'll escort you out of here in handcuffs." The board members whispered among themselves, their eyes wide. For the first time, Karen could see it doubt. People weren't afraid of her anymore. They were ashamed. Her chest heaved as she sputtered. This is a mistake.
Ow.
You'll regret humiliating me like this." But deep down, she knew it. The Queen of Maplewood Estates was losing her crown. The small, windowless police station room buzzed faintly with fluorescent light. Karen sat at the cold metal table, her arms crossed tight, lips pressed into a thin line. The confidence she carried in the neighborhood was nowhere to be seen. Officer Martinez entered with a file, setting it down with a heavy thud. Officer Riley followed, leaning casually against the wall, arms folded. Karen Whitfield. Martinez began firmly. "You're being investigated for unlawful entry, harassment, and misuse of authority. Do you understand your rights?" Though it sounded brittle. "Oh, please. This is ridiculous. I'm not a criminal, I'm a community leader. HOA presidents don't get interrogated like thieves." Riley arched an eyebrow. "Breaking and entering makes you exactly that, ma'am." Karen slammed her palm on the table. "I wasn't breaking in. I was protecting property values. Daniel Harris is a threat to this neighborhood. Everyone knows it. He leaves his blinds mismatched. His fence isn't regulation height. If I didn't step in, who would?" Martinez calmly opened the file. Inside were photographs, the notes Karen had taped to Daniel's door. Pictures of her trespassing into his yard and written complaints from other neighbors. One photo showed Karen peering over Daniel's backyard fence with binoculars, her face drained of color. "These," Martinez said, sliding the photos toward her, "are evidence of harassment. Multiple neighbors signed statements against you. Seems Daniel isn't the only one tired of your so-called leadership." Karen's hands shook as she pushed the photos away. "They're lying. They're jealous of me. Keep the neighborhood perfect. Without me, Maplewood would fall apart." Riley leaned forward, his voice calm but cutting. "No, ma'am. Without you, Maplewood might finally breathe." Karen's eyes welled with tears. She switched tactics, her voice trembling. I didn't mean any harm. I was just trying to keep things beautiful. Can't you understand? I gave my life to that neighborhood. It was my kingdom." Martinez closed the file, his expression firm. "Your kingdom doesn't put you above the law. You're facing charges, and unless you want this to get worse, I suggest you cooperate." Karen's tears streaked down her cheeks. For the first time, she realized it. The power she once wielded so proudly had turned into the very chain dragging her down. Karen sat slumped at the table, her tears drying into stiff streaks on her cheeks. The officers had stepped out for a moment, leaving her with only the buzzing light and her thoughts, rehearsed excuses in her head, imagining how she'd spin this mess to the neighborhood, how she'd still somehow come out the hero. The door clicked open. Karen straightened, expecting Martinez or Riley. Instead, Daniel Harris stepped inside. He wasn't in cuffs, wasn't in trouble, wasn't even nervous. He walked in calm, collected, holding a coffee cup the way a man holds. Victory. He pulled out the chair across from her and sat down, his eyes fixed on her with quiet amusement. Karen's mouth fell open. What are you doing here? You set me up. You called them, didn't you? Daniel leaned back, sipping his coffee. Karen, you did this to yourself. All I did was tell the truth. You walked right through my door with a stolen key. The police didn't need my help to see who you really are. Karen clenched her fists. You don't belong in Maplewood. You've been nothing but a nuisance. I built that neighborhood. I'm Maplewood. Daniel chuckled softly. No, you're a bully with a clipboard. And now you're a bully who broke into someone's home. She bristled, shaking her head furiously. You think you've won, don't you? The board will back me up. They always do. Daniel leaned forward, his tone dropping to a razor-sharp whisper. Not this time. They're done with you, Karen. While you were here screaming about fences and curtains, real neighbors were tired of living under your thumb. Gave the police statements against you. The board is already calling an emergency vote. Her eyes widened, panic flashing across her face. A vote? No, they can't. They wouldn't dare. Daniel cut her off with a smirk. They dared. And here's the kicker. I was asked to help restructure the HOA with your behavior on record. You'll never run that board again. Karen's breath caught in her throat. For the first time in years, she felt powerless, cornered, dethroned. Her voice dropped to a whisper. What do you want from me? Daniel set his coffee cup down with a quiet clink. Nothing. I don't want revenge. I just want peace. You stay out of my life, out of my property, and maybe, just maybe, you won't lose everything if you keep pushing, Karen. I promise you, it's time the police won't just let you cry your way out. Karen stared at him, her kingdom of control crumbling like sand through her fingers. The sun dipped low over Maplewood Estates. As the community clubhouse filled with murmurs and shifting chairs, it wasn't often that the HOA board called an emergency. Meeting and word had spread quickly. Neighbors, some curious, some eager, crowded the small hall. Parents with kids, elderly couples, young homeowners, all had come to witness the spectacle. At the front sat the board members, their faces tense. In the corner, Karen stood stiffly, her pastel sweater rumpled, her hair no longer neat. She looked less like a queen and more like someone clinging to the last thread of authority. Daniel slipped quietly into the back row. He didn't need to speak tonight. The truth would speak for itself. Board chairwoman Linda cleared her throat. We're here tonight to address a serious matter. As many of you know, Mrs. Karen Whitfield has acted as president of this HOA for several years. But recent events have forced us to reconsider her position. The crowd buzzed, whispers rippling through the room. A man in the audience muttered loud enough to be heard, "About time." Karen shot him a glare, then rose to her feet. This is outrageous. I have dedicated my life to this neighborhood. Without me, Maplewood would have gone to ruin. I kept your lawns trimmed, your houses painted, your children safe from bad influences like Daniel Harris. Several heads turned toward Daniel, but instead of scowls, he saw sympathy in their eyes. Sympathy for him, not her. Linda held up a hand. Mrs. Whitfield, trespassing into a resident's home is not protection. It's a crime. And it wasn't just Mr. Harris who suffered. We have collected testimony from multiple families, notes slipped under doors, fines invented out of thin air, harassment, fear. A woman stood from the crowd. She'd fined us $200 because our roses were the wrong color. Another man added bitterly. She threatened to sue me for parking my RV on my own driveway. One by one, neighbors rose, voices growing louder, their grievances pouring out like a dam breaking. Karen's face paled. The control she had held so tightly was unraveling in front of everyone. "Lies," she cried, her voice cracking. "All lies. You're ungrateful, all of you. Without me, this place will fall apart." Linda's voice was steady as a gavel. "The board has voted unanimously. Effective immediately. Karen Whitfield is removed as HOA president. Furthermore, due to her behavior, we will recommend she not hold any position of authority in this community again." The crowd erupted in a mix of cheers and relieved applause. Karen swayed on her feet, her world collapsing. Ruled through fear, not a single neighbor stood beside her. In the back, Daniel allowed himself the faintest smile. Justice didn't always come loudly, but tonight, it echoed through Maplewood louder than any HOA fine ever could. Weeks passed, and Maplewood Estates felt different. The air seemed lighter, friendlier. Kids played on the sidewalks without their parents fearing another HOA violation. Lawns were still tidy, houses still neat, but without the constant shadow of Karen's clipboard hovering over them. Daniel enjoyed mornings on his porch now. Neighbors who once avoided eye contact waved as they walked by. Some even stopped to thank him quietly for standing up to her. For the first time since he moved in, Maplewood felt like a community, not a dictatorship. Karen, however, was a ghost of her former self. Her pastel sweaters no longer matched her sharp authority. She walked the streets in silence, eyes cast down as whispers followed her. Where once she strutted like royalty, now she shuffled, a fallen queen stripped of her crown. One chilly morning, Daniel spotted a moving truck parked in front of her pristine white house. Boxes were stacked by the curb. Karen stood on the lawn, barking half-hearted orders at the movers. Though even her voice had lost its bite, Daniel walked past, hands in his pockets. She turned and saw him. For a moment, the fire returned to her eyes, but it quickly fizzled, replaced with something unfamiliar. Defeat. "You think you won, don't you?" she muttered, her voice low. Daniel paused, meeting her gaze. "No, Karen, nobody won. This isn't about winning. It's about finally being able to live in peace." Her lips tightened, but she said nothing more. She turned back toward the moving truck, shoulders hunched, her empire reduced to cardboard boxes as the truck pulled away later that afternoon. Neighbors stood on their lawns, watching silently. No one waved goodbye. No one shed a tear. The woman who had ruled them with threats and fines left Maplewood not as a leader, but as an exile. That evening, Daniel sat on his porch with a fresh cup of coffee, the sunset casting warm colors across the quiet street. For the first time since moving there, he felt truly at home. He smiled to himself. The war with HOA Karen was finally over, and in the silence that followed, Maplewood Estates finally belonged to its people again.